They walked bravely into battle.
They served bravely for others.
And a piece of metal went through my friend and went into my arm.
And even after coming home, sacrifices still being made.
As many of these brave men and women search for answers.
Search for acceptance.
A lot of people don't feel that women served in the military, right? That's the first part, is being seen as a veteran.
Search for a place to still serve their country.
And when I transitioned out of the military, I felt like I lost my purpose in life.
So join us as we share their struggles.
I don't really want to die, I just don't know what to do.
Join us as we share their laughter.
I wouldn't have eaten anything else.
No, I wouldn't. Yeah, no,
Join us as we share their voices.
Good evening, everyone. Glad you've joined us for our Veterans Day special, Veterans Voices. I'm Donna Terrell.
Hello, good evening, everybody. I'm Bob Clausen. Don and I will be profiling select veterans throughout the next half hour, Arkansans who truly are hometown heroes. We're currently on the grounds of the Arkansas State Capitol, surrounded by monuments to all of them. Specifically, we're standing here where likenesses are behind us. Those servicemen and women received the Medal of Honor, all of them heroes in their own right, without a doubt. Scotty Mack makes his living on KVRE radio, living on the airways. However, his last day in Vietnam, in a battle he wasn't even supposed to be involved in, he reached for a radio and made a call that saved his life. Scotty Mack's voice has been heard on the radio for decades, currently hosting a call-in show on KVRE radio. In the 1960s, in the jungle of Vietnam, his voice on the radio saved his life. And today, behind the big smile and the infectious laugh, you wouldn't know that it was a day that took years for him to come to terms with.
I waited a long time because, you don't want people to think you're crazy, and who are you going to talk to? Nobody understands what you're talking about. So finally, it was in the 90s before I ever did anything about it.
As a senior at Hot Springs High in the early 60s, for many teenage boys, it wasn't as much about what comes after graduation as it was wait for it.
When the senior class was getting ready to graduate, they took us all to Little Rock and gave us a physical exam. So that was pretty scary.
What did that tell you?
It told us we was going to get drafted.
The learning curve was steep.
As soon as you land the plane, the drill sergeants, get off that plane, screaming at you immediately. You were loaded on cattle trucks and driven to the replacement center.
From Hot Springs High to artillery gunner and target.
And all the time you're laying the gun, these bullets are bouncing off the shields, pew, pew, around your head. Wow. And you're just glad the guy's a bad shot.
And with luck, possibly the longest year of his young life came to a close.
The gun chief and me, we were supposed to, process out the next day to come back to the States.
But the Army needed one more day and his experience to set up a forward fire base. And that experience began talking right away.
We pulled into this dry rice paddy, right? So that, right then I said, something's wrong because only the women were working the rice fields, no men.
So you knew instinctively that
I said, something's going to happen, and this is my last day. The gun chief and I, we took our entrenching tools and we dug a big hole and, covered it. And I guess that's what saved us.
Why were you doing that?
Because we just had a bad feeling that something was going to happen.
Other soldiers opted to not follow the lead of experience.
Yeah, they were laughing. Why are you guys doing all this digging? It's my last day here, and I don't want to be wounded or killed. As soon as the first round hit, then just mortar.
Just raining down on you.
Yeah. And so then we looked out the little window we had in the bunker, and we saw they were inside the compound.
The fire base was overrun. Scotty, wounded, stayed in the dugout shelter.
And a piece of metal went through my friend and went into my arm. And then I had to sit with a poncho and hold his chest for 3 hours because he had you could see his heart. That's how bad it was. So,
and this battle is raging all around you.
Yep.
Unable to save his friend's life, Scotty crawled out, found a radio. He couldn't contact ground support, but his voice was heard by someone.
As a matter of fact, I kept, switching the frequencies, and I actually got Puff the Magic Dragon.
Puff is a gunship that could cover a football field with machine gun fire in seconds.
And he said, "Where are you?" I said, "Highway 4. He said, "I'll find you."
His call on the radio was the beginning of the end of the battle. The other men who went into the jungle with Scotty.
And every one of them got killed except us 2 out of the battery. Well, I mean 4, really.
The battle so fierce, 4-star General William Westmoreland, commander of all United States forces in Vietnam, flew in to investigate the aftermath.
They said, you're not supposed to talk to him. So I said, well, I'm going to tell him. I went up there and said, excuse me, sir, I'm supposed to go home today. What? What are you doing out here? He said, get on my helicopter.
It was a 4-star ride to a hospital and then home. But home was as foreign as Vietnam a year earlier.
They made us put on our civilian clothes because they said, you can't go to San Francisco like that or you'll get spit on and rocks thrown at you and things like that.
Did you see things like that
Yeah.
happen?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Protesters.
How'd that make you feel?
Well, that made you feel terrible because we thought we was doing something good fighting for our country.
The battle within had no way out.
You try to sleep at night and you couldn't sleep, and then you'd go to sleep and you'd have these bad dreams of what happened, and you'd break out in sweat because you kept reliving this over and over and over.
Until he opened up about it.
It actually helped. And what we do now is a group of us guys get together at the VFW right here in Hot Springs, and we sit around and talk about, Vietnam, and it seems to help.
His seeking professional help and veteran support have quieted the guns in his mind, and understanding has reinstilled pride of service and the feeling of home he didn't get as a returning combat soldier.
But I have had a lot of young kids come up and say, thank you for your service.
How does that make you feel? I think sometimes that's something small to say,
Yep,
but it is appreciated.
it is.
There are more than 185,000 veterans in the natural state. That's about 8% of the state's population. Of those, about 2% are from the World War II era, and more than 35% are from the Vietnam War era. And most of them are in the central part of the state, more than 80,000, with only about 25,500 down south.
But some of our veterans need some help. About 100 of them are homeless, and almost 25,000 are living in unsafe or crowded homes or are simply paying too much in housing. About 4.5% of them don't have a job. 8.5% are living in poverty. And a little more than 26% of them were disabled while in service.
And for women vets, it's even worse. According to the Wounded Warrior Project, they're more likely to be unemployed, to suffer from post-traumatic stress syndrome, anxiety, and depression.
One Central Arkansas woman knows those challenges all too well. Rachel McGarr, a mother of 2, left the military 10 years ago, and all these years later, she still faces issues adjusting to civilian life. She decided to share her story tonight because she hopes it will help other female veterans, and many of them going through the exact same thing.
Today, Rachel McGarr is doing fine. But after she left the military 4 years ago, this Air Force veteran was severely depressed and had to fight to see a therapist and get medication.
We lose so many to suicide each year. My dad was a veteran and committed suicide 4 years ago to this month. So I always make it a priority to take care of myself.
After pledging her allegiance to the armed forces when she left, she faced a battle to be seen by a medical professional who could help her.
It took me weeks to get in.
A recent Disabled American Vets Women Veterans report shows that between 2020 and 21, the suicide rate for ex-military women increased by more than 24%, nearly 4 times higher than men with the same background and substantially higher than non-service women. And this mother of 2 almost had to wage war for something as basic as a trip to see a gynecologist.
Why do you think it's so tough?
I think it's tough because women veterans do make up such a small population of the veteran community. So it's hard to justify to them to add a full-time gynecologist to their staff.
Rachel falls in line with a long list of women veterans who've experienced issues getting health care.
Does that worry you?
It does worry me, definitely.
Alicia Granis has been out of the Air Force for 10 years and knows the dilemma of the male-dominated armed forces.
I heard so many of my sisters, when they go to, VA center, someone will come up to them and say, oh, what branch did your husband serve in?
Stories like that prompting her to create Military Service Sisters, a support group in Mountain Home.
Knowing that they have somebody that they can call. They have a sister that they can call. They have someone that who can help assist them, that they can relate to, that they can talk it out.
And it's growing with chapters throughout Arkansas, including Harrison, Jonesboro, Hot Springs, and beyond. Rachel, who lived with her family in a small town out of state, moved to Central Arkansas, where she now works as a civilian at the Little Rock Air Force Base. She found female support and friendships here with women who understand her, unlike other places where she worked.
I became a teacher, so I taught for 2 years. That was even difficult because I was still working with people that just couldn't connect with me.
Each one with their own VA story to tell, but they can all relate to this one.
And I walk in and I'm in a waiting room full of older gentlemen. So it's just kind of weird, especially when I'm going in and they're like, "What are you being seen for?" And I'm like, "Oh, I'm here to see the GYN."
Rachel's call of duty: stay determined.
I'm a fighter. I can fight the VA. I can jump over the obstacles, but I know that there are people out there who don't have that same resiliency.
Missing out on a debt owed for a sacrifice made.
Many of Rachel's problems stemmed from living in a small town out of state before she and her husband moved their family to Central Arkansas. Here in the natural state, Holly Skoma is the Arkansas Women's State Coordinator at the VA. Her job is to specifically help female veterans. She told me about a number of programs and resources that they have in the state. That information is available to you right now on the Fox 16 and KARK websites. And there are more people across the state actively working to help vets who are thinking of taking their lives.
After the break, we're going to tell you about one of them and explain why he's having to take a break, taking a step back after years of helping our nation's heroes. Suicide is the 13th leading cause of death for veterans, that according to a 2021 report from the U.S. Department of Veteran Affairs. That year, more than 6,300 veteran suicides were reported, 82 of those right here in Arkansas.
I injected heroin, which wasn't even my drug of choice, in an attempt to kill myself.
That's military veteran Michael Brooks. On the brink of death, the Bald Knob native decided he actually didn't want to die. However, he said there was no other way out.
And tonight, our Ashley King shares how he's using his experience to save others.
Come on, Layla.
Playing fetch outside in the backyard is one of the things that gives Michael Brooks solace. It's something Michael never thought would be possible. That's because just 7 years ago, this is what Michael looked like, addicted to meth and living in his car.
It was probably the worst time of my whole life. I lost every connection I'd ever had.
So let's rewind to how Michael got here. In 1999, the Bald Knob native enlisted into the Army National Guard when he was a junior in high school. 1 month after finishing basic training, terrorists attacked the United States on September 11, 2001. He was quickly sent overseas for 2 combat tours in Iraq. But it was this second tour that changed his life forever.
There was an IED in the road that we didn't see, and it detonated, and shrapnel flew into the turret. I was in the gun turret, and I took shrapnel in my hip. Collapsed. There was a small skirmish, and then I was medevaced out.
He stayed overseas for 2 more weeks, and then
Went back out on another mission and was detonated on again, and actually received a brain trauma that got me sent home.
he spent time in a military hospital surrounded by pain meds. And that's when his troubles became worse.
In 2007, a lot of veterans were getting overprescribed medications. It was just a thing that was happening. I fell into that group.
That addiction transitioned from pain pills to meth. And then one day in 2017, after being homeless for nearly a decade, he was ready to end it all.
I injected heroin, which wasn't even my drug of choice, in an attempt to kill myself. I remembered as I was passing out from the injection, I knew I'd overdosed. And as I was blacking out, I remembered begging God, like, if somebody could come in here and save me right now, I don't really want to die, I just don't know what to do.
If you're a veteran in crisis, help is available 24/7 through We Are the 22. All you have to do is call 855-932-7384 or go to wearethe22.org. Once you call, a 2-team person of veterans will deploy to your home to help you through the storm. From finding kamikaze pilots to now flying just because he wants to, one Arkansas man has done just about everything.
Coming up on Veterans Voices, we'll have his story. Less than 1% of those who served in World War II are still alive today.
Part of that 1% right here in Arkansas at Conway.
Some of them would sneak in on us we get called down every once in a while because they thought the radar operator wasn't doing his thing, and one of them would get over the fleet. And it was a rainy day, and they got right over the top edge of it coming in. Our radar would not pick them up.
Technology has transformed tremendously since the 1930s and 40s, and the radar operator set the stage of an advantageous tool in fighting for freedom and protecting the public. After serving in the Navy, Al started a lumber company and began flying in his free time. He has more than 2,000 hours in the sky and took dozens of people up in planes for their first flights, all without a single accident.
It sounds like something right out of a movie, the Ghost Army, but it was very real. A unit of about 1,100 soldiers tasked with fooling the enemy, giving the actual units time to move around and attack the enemy. And they trained not too far from here, at Camp Forest in Carthage, Tennessee.
Their mission was deception, and to carry it out, they used inflatable tanks and sound effects and illusion, impersonation, right on the battlefields of Europe.
Today, there are just 3 living members of the Ghost Army, and this year they were finally honored at the Capitol, 75 years after they served.
Coming up next on Veterans Voices, the story of a woman who created the perfect place for corner table conversations.
Every veteran should have the opportunity to be able to share his or her story, but it's not always easy for them to talk about. It can be painful at times.
One bakery owner in Conway understands that, offering a safe space and a unique outlet to be heard.
We didn't know where we were. We saw airplanes and we landed.
We had to go out there and tow them off the runway.
A simple conversation over a cup of coffee.
I went and talked to XO and I said, I'd like to go to Vietnam. And he said, are you sure? And I said, yes, sir. I was crazy.
But for Mike Mason, it's mornings like these that fuel the soul more than any cup of joe ever could.
I wake up, I get up, I get ready, and I come up here.
It's become part of his everyday routine. Monday through Saturday, huddled around this corner table at Julie's Sweet Shop in Conway.
I mean, if she was open on Sundays, I'd probably be here before church for coffee.
For veterans like himself,
Next thing I know, I've got orders to survival school.
it's a safe space with others who understand.
Friends right off the bat because we all have a military connection.
Since she first opened in 2013, owner Julie Goodnight has made it her mission to put veterans first.
Most of my customers were World War II veterans, and they kept a lot of their stories inside. And you just as I've gotten older, I've learned to appreciate, and we just have no idea what they've been through.
Each year on Veterans Day, she recognizes those who served with a special ceremony. But over the years, this corner gathering has grown into something more than she could have ever imagined.
They can have some freedom to talk about whatever they went through, you know, and they all understand each other. They all get it.
We've got a lot of young guys that don't really like to talk about it now, like me, and then we've got a lot of older folks that they really don't either. But it's important to get together, hear these stories, and share their stories.
But some stories aren't easily shared.
We lost 134.
Which is why Julie came up with an idea.
I just want to try to find a way to honor them.
Write them down instead. Each book contains the written accounts of nearly 200 veterans in Faulkner County, either from the vet themselves or their families.
You don't realize that they've been through so much. They don't demand respect, but you look at them in a different way.
For many, it's a first step on a long road towards healing.
People don't understand that why we do kind of keep everything in us, but at the same time, we want to tell everybody.
A journey that sometimes starts with a conversation over coffee at a corner table.
Maybe we do make a difference to other people, and I think that helps a lot too.
New editions of the book are printed each year and handed out at Julie's Veterans Day celebration. Anywhere from 5 to 10 veterans are added, allowing the book to grow year after year.
We'd like to take a minute to give a special thanks to the veterans that Donna and I get to work with every day. Our Director of Operations, Ed Stoll, digital journalist, Alex Kinlan, and Director, Dylan Jackson.
Ed was an Aero Scout in the U.S. Army. He left active duty in 1995 and served in the National Guard until 2002.
And Alex served in the Navy, leaving the service in 1979 as a petty officer second class. Alex tells us he was on one of the first ships that landed in Egypt since World War II and was part of the first F-14 squadrons, while Ed flew helicopters as part of the 1st Battalion 229 Aviation Regiment at Fort Bragg and served our country in Somalia.
Now Dylan is a Marine. He left active duty in 2017 and went into the Navy Reserves, where he worked as a medic, supporting the Marine Corps until last year. I'd also like to give a special thanks to my dad and my uncle. My dad, Bob Clausen, and his brother, my uncle Bill Clausen, both enlisted during World War II. My dad served in the Air Corps, my uncle Bill in the infantry. He was wounded in the Battle of the Bulge and came home with a Purple Heart and a Bronze Star for Valor with 2 oak leaf clusters. They have and always will be my heroes.
Also, thank you to my dad. He was a World War II veteran. He's gone now, but he did have stories to tell. Thank you, Daddy, for your service. We also want to thank our producer's dad, Raymond Blackburn. He served in the U.S. Navy and was at the 1958 atom bomb testing in the Bikini Atoll.
And when you look beneath some of these stories, there are even some more interesting ones, if not funny, because Kim tells us Raymond was actually handpicked out of a group of sailors when actress Zsa Zsa Gabor wanted to go on a date with a sailor, a mission he turned down.
Wow.
We'd like to thank you for joining us as we give a salute to those brave men and women who risked it all for our country.
And we want to thank all of you who have served or are serving. Thanks for your service. Have a wonderful evening.